Wednesday, 16th of November 2022. This evening's show, we are discussing the future of Michael Appleton as the Pool crashed their fourth defeat on the bounce against lowly and managerless Wigan at the DW Stadium last Saturday, wherever else it's called these days. And as we go into the World Cup break in the relegation zone, second bottom. I'm John Aspinall, this is the SEASIDE podcast match reaction show. Wigan Athletic 2, Blackpool 1. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the SEASIDE podcast. Welcome in the comments. Welcome on the audio pod if you're listening after the event. A Wednesday for a reaction show. Very, very much overdue, but sickness has unfortunately struck down the camp. Mr. Nick Smith on his deathbed at the moment. He's on a drip of Farmer's Blonde, keeping him going.
He's in the lakes, I take it, though. He's always in the lakes.
Funny that he's never sick for that, is he? I'm a bit of a Bob Fleming myself this evening. But,
Kendall Hospital. At Kendall Hospital, will be in.
Yeah.
Cottage Hospital.
So yeah, this should be interesting, shouldn't it? Tim, a lot of people have been asking where is the pod. We thought a lot of people may not want to be reminded of the weekend at the DW.
We didn't, did we?
We are here. What?
We didn't want to be reminded of it, really, did we?
No, not really. I think it needs discussing, doesn't it?
As I've said on AVFTT, we've all risen Lazarus-like from our deathbeds. Apart from me, who was never ill in the first place. And you know, just to bring it to the podcast, you know, the podcast team. So we're here tonight. You're looking very normal, seeing you've been both ill with it all, and don't look too bad.
It turns out I was only hungover, so.
Common affliction, that is.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's got
John, it. Is that for effect, or is that actually?
No, that was I've got a chest infection, but I will soldier on. Daz McKenzie, we're clashing with the Antiques road trip.
We'll be clashing with Matt. Actually, I don't think he's doing this. Matt Hancock's on at 9 o'clock as well. It's been quite amusing watching him do all his trials and tribulations in the jungle. But I think he's that good. He's that good at it. I think they got bored of him doing them now.
I was quite pleased to see, shocked and surprised, I think, when I saw Chris Moyles in there. I was like, who's this old geezer? It's like Chris Moyles. I was like, what the fuck? And I looked him up on Wikipedia, and I'm 2 years older than him. So I was quite pleased with that. I was like, Christ. He had a hard paper round or something.
Well, he's lost a lot of weight, hasn't he?
Yeah,
he's lost about 8 stone or something, I think.
He was moaning about Boy George nicking his towel yesterday.
Where was he?
So I turned it on and I turned it off after that.
I must admit, I had the initial interest. It was only because of Hancock, just to see how it went down, and I'm trying to weed myself off it now.
I've managed to get by without giving it any attention at all.
Cock by name, cock by nature. Not you, Mitch. Let's get on with the pod anyway. SEASIDE 7, the first topic on the SEASIDE 7 at Wigan away was, I've titled this, The Turnout. I've not even written these out. So it was a very good turnout, Tim.
Incredible, really, isn't it? I mean, it's been interesting because obviously we've had this debate over do we get the whole of the Shankly Cop at Preston, and quite a few of the knobbers have been saying you'll never fill it anyway. You'll bring more than 3. Well, the fact that we took 4 to Wigan when we're on a dire run of form is testament, I think, to the fact that we can turn out in numbers. I think our away support on Saturday was one of the largest in the whole of the Football League and the Premier League. So that again, part of it is because you've got such a large away end compared with what most teams get. But equally, it was an impressive turnout, I thought, and everybody was in. wouldn't say it was as boisterous as I've seen it at some other away games. I mean, we were reasonably late in because we went in that marquee thing at the side of the turnstiles, which was like the away. It was the slowest service of all time. So we'd gone there. So we all literally came in just before kickoff, but it didn't seem the concourse didn't seem to be quite as bouncing as normal. But I've got to say, I thought the fans generally, particularly in the first half, were in very good voice.
Mitch, go on.
Yeah, sorry. No, I thought you were going to ask a question then. No, I thought it was cracking. I mean, I must have got in a bit earlier because it was. I had a proper good pre-match Wigan experience with sort of pints in Wigan and stuff, and because I went on the train for once, and Wigan was, there was pool fans everywhere in Wigan. Went to a couple of pubs full of pool fans. Had a wander around. Pool fans everywhere. It was great, and I must have got a bit early, and then it was great because I'd walked down with my mate who's a Wigan fan, and then sort of split up just at that bridge where you go from one side to the other, whether you're home or away, and then sort of straight in, and it was concourse was full of smoke and everything, and then sort of it was rammed, pushed through, got up to the seat, and it was fantastic. Unfortunately, that was probably the highlight of it all. To be fair, the first half, as we were going to say, I thought the first half was actually really quite enjoyable, decent atmosphere, behind the team, and we played quite well. So it started well, and I think it does go to show that. I think it goes to show that we've got a lot. We've complained about our away followings being down a bit, but we've got a lot of home games, and a lot of people can only afford to do so many. Start again. So at that point again, we've got a lot of local away games, and a lot of people can probably only afford to do so many away games. And I think a lot of people have kept the powder dry for those local games because there is only so much spare cash. So maybe some of the more, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a game where we're a bit down. Like Sheffield United, we were down on what we were. But if you can only afford to go to so many, you're going to go to Wigan, you're going to go to Burnley, and you're going to go to those ones that are within reach, aren't you? So,
Tim, obviously we had a large contingent. The Wigan boys, I don't know what you want to call them, were congregated to our left-hand side. It's actually good to see a crowd at a Wigan game. They're normally very...
It's probably, of all the games and there's certain aspects of their support that we'll talk about, no doubt, shortly. But what I did quite like was that they seemed, whether it's by design, because I most certainly have not noticed it when I've been before, they all seem to congregate in that stand to the left of us. And to be fair, by doing so, they're able to create a reasonable atmosphere. And so it's probably, of all the games I've ever been to at Wigan, the one where the home fans have been the most vocal that I've ever heard. Which is, to be fair, as a collective, before we turn to our Irish tricolour carrier, etc. It was good. It made for some good banter. It made for some good exchanges, and it was it's a proper Lancashire derby, wasn't it? Maybe not in the same realms as Preston and Burnley, but most, it was sort of like, for me, had as much going on as you would get at a Blackpool derby match. So I've got to say, atmosphere-wise, I thought it was pretty good. I didn't actually see the attendance at the end, but was it about 13 or something, or 14,000? I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's a big old ground for them to fill, isn't it?
Don't you find it weird though when you have a ground where the most atmosphere is coming from the side? Because the end opposite us was really, really sparsely populated, and I always just find it very odd when you have a club whose atmosphere comes from the side. I don't know if that's just me.
Well, I think they've done it so they're near to the away fans, presumably. Yeah. That's what they've done. I can understand why they did it, and I don't think it actually impinged on their contribution at all. I think it probably, if anything, it heightened the atmosphere. And what happens is, and we've seen this, although not very successfully on the pitch from our perspective, that when we give the north end of the east to away fans, it does create a better atmosphere, and you can generally, unless you play Middlesbrough, you can feed off that, and it's to everybody's mutual benefit, isn't it? Because our home games, when they're stuck in that southeast corner, we can't hear them in the north, and if we're ebbing a bit, then the fact that the other side start up, it could be something that gets you going. So yeah, it was good. It was good. I was impressed by them.
Not so impressive though was the disrespect shown to the last post, as Mitch, as Tim's mentioned there. One of them was holding a tricolour and shouts and screams when the minute silence was up.
Yeah,
well, I mean, laughing, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah, at the time I didn't see any of the tricolour stuff, but all I heard was, there was the usual sort of occasional, somebody whistled and somebody went, shut up, and then I just heard this laughing, and I thought, why are they laughing? And then I wasn't sure whether it was us or them that started the applause, because I think some of ours started shouting "shut up," and then somebody somewhere obviously decided that it would be a good idea to start applauding to drown it all out, which would probably, is you lose the impact of the last post, because that sort of in the silence is very, very moving, and it's a good sort of point of reflection, isn't it? But I think in the context, I think whoever did start that applause did the right thing, and it sort of spread around the whole ground.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just unbelievably disrespectful. I mean, I don't know what the makeup was of that group, but I can bet the bottom dollar they weren't predominantly of Celtic origin. So it's whether it's linked to McLean and his stance or not, and the sort of like think they're being big by copying him, I don't know. But listen, there's plenty of their granddads, or more likely great granddads, and great granddads died in those wars, and the Pals regiments. Wigan had its Wigan Pals who got mowed down, and I just thought, to be honest, it made me a bit sick. Really, I was absolutely disgusted with it. I do think our lot shouldn't have shouted "shut up," but sometimes it's a natural reaction, and I think from as best I can recall, it was us who started all clapping, realizing you were never going to gain that silence again. And it was the best thing to do. And it was probably the most appropriate thing to do. And all the ground sort of joined in, didn't they? So, but it was absolutely disgraceful. I said it wasn't just one. There must have been, whether they intended to do it or whether it just happened, but they all started laughing in the middle of fucking minute silence. I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my life. It was just disgraceful.
But I think I was talking about it after the game with a couple of Wigan fans, and they were saying, well, it's just, it is this thing that time's passing, and what it actually signifies and what it actually stands for is drifting away, isn't it? So, both my grandparents fought in the Second World War. Obviously, when I was a kid, there was still a few people knocking around who fought in the First World War, and there was a few old boys who'd, got tin legs and stuff because of what had happened 60, 70 years before. And we're drifting away from that. And you wonder, don't you, whether they actually really properly understand what it is? Because they were a bunch of young lads. They were sort of a bunch of the young lads in that kind of young lads uniform with the hoods up, with the little goggles on and stuff. And you wonder to what extent they really understand what the whole ceremony is about.
It's funny, but everywhere I've gone in the world, apart from when you go anywhere near Liverpool or Celtic, people seem to get what a minute's silence is all about. They don't need to be particularly educated on the specifics of who died and when they died. They know it's a mark of respect, and they know what it's all about. We have the remembrance, we have the poppies, we have Remembrance Sunday every year. It's on telly. They were just ignorant, and I think I do believe it's linked to some form of cult with that Pratt who plays for them, who seems to be unable to recognise the fact that whatever his political views are, that he should show some respect in relation to people who died in the wars, including plenty of Irish people, let's be right. He's from Northern Ireland. There's plenty of Northern Ireland soldiers died in both wars as well. So anyway, I've said my piece. It was shocking. I did say at AVFTT at the time, I thought we should have just ignored them, but I think it's difficult to do that, and I sort of get why some people would say shut up. And I know it said in the comments it sounded like we started it. We didn't. it was a reaction to that laughing. And
yeah, we did. We definitely didn't start it because I was right above where people started shouting from, and it was absolutely 100% a response. We didn't start that. No way.
Yeah.
As Matt Smith just said, I'm at bring back national service. Yeah, and the birch for them lot. Right, let's move on. The lineup. Get it up. Again, as the nun said to the vicar. I put the lineup. No Grimmy. 3 changes. From
the elephant in the room, eh? The elephant in the room.
Connolly, Williams, and Lavery all starting. But yeah, the main shock was Maxwell retaining the goalkeeper's jersey.
Well, it's the one decision that you could take. I mean, I think other than that, I think that probably is the strongest lineup we could put out of the players who are fit. But I think I said on here, I certainly put something on some internet thing or other that at the time when he brought Maxwell back, I said, look, he's an experienced voice. He brings a bit of direction and control perhaps to an otherwise ragged defence, but it's just run its course because we are still shite at defending, and we've got now a keeper that is he's not as good as Grimmy. You know, he's not a bad keeper. I don't wish to see Maxwell sort of drop from the top of the big one as some kind of punishment, or rowed out to sea and tied to a rock. Or, you know, I've no real problem with Chris Maxwell. He's just not as good as Grimmy. And even if Grimmy plays and we make exactly the same mistakes and exactly the same thing happens, then there's the potential for Grimshaw to learn from the circumstance, because he's a young keeper who's played, I think, less than about 35 games of senior football, or started less than about 35 games. So he's gaining experience, because we just don't seem to be getting any advantage now from playing Maxwell at all. That's my view. And Grimmy got dropped for virtually nothing. Yeah. So why doesn't the same thing apply to Maxwell?
Tim, Michael Appleton's come out in the press today. I don't know if you've seen it, defending the decision to not bring Grimmy back. More or less saying, what was it now? Something along the lines of like, everyone's a football manager, aren't they? So being a bit.
You don't need to be a football. You don't need to be a football manager to know that Grimshaw's better than Maxwell. And I find it quite condescending that Appleton thinks that people can watch the team, can't have valid opinions, very valid opinions, I think, in this particular case, and voice them. You know, what we're meant to do, just worship at the altar of Michael Appleton and his managerial skills. I'm sorry, but in this case, it's fundamentally wrong. As has just been said by Mitch, Grimshaw got dropped for very little. Probably his distribution when he had the ball at his feet, as I've spoken about in the past. And Maxwell seems to keep the shirt come what may. My take on it is that Appleton and Grimshaw have had a fallout in some shape or form, and he's committed, at least in the short term, to sticking with Maxwell, notwithstanding the fact that it means that it's compromising the team and the squad, because on any footballing basis, Grimshaw played on Saturday.
Reading
any footballing basis.
Just reading Sean's Lanks Live article. Yeah, Chris is an experienced player, an experienced head, and he did his bit against Wigan. He certainly wasn't the reason why we lost the game, and he certainly hasn't been the reason why we've lost games in the past. Well, I beg to differ.
Well, I think even if you accept that there probably is, you know, you always get it when a fan favourite is out the team. Whoever's in the team, everybody pounces on everything and tries to, you know, spot the mistake and pin stuff on them. But what I would like to know is, what was it that Grimshaw did that was so awful to get dropped? When he said, oh, he's had a few indifferent games, hasn't he? And I hadn't watched those games thinking, bloody hell, Grimmy's been shite. But I have watched some games since Max. I mean, let's be fair. I've watched some games since Maxwell been back and thought, yeah, he's played quite well. But I've also watched some games and thought he's at very least been indifferent. So am I not seeing the same games? Is there some kind of secret goalkeeping knowledge that I've not got? What is it in particular that allows Appleton? What is it that Appleton sees where he says, "Oh, well, Maxwell's playing well," and what's he seeing in Grimshaw that says he's indifferent? I don't get it.
Well, I'm interested from Sean is because obviously he's in the chat. I think it was him who put the stats up that showed Grimshaw still.
1.9. Yeah, he's above. He's saved 1.9 more goals than you'd expect him to, whereas Maxwell has let in. Maxwell's on something like minus
0.6, is it 0.4 or 0.6?
Yeah.
So Sean being the stato man that he's been in his career on the podcast would be shouting out, I'd expect, for Grimshaw to play every week on the basis of those stats. And he's, I don't get it. Well, the only explanation is there's been a fallout, and I think that's the only logical conclusion you can draw. Grimshaw's challenged Appleton over the decision to drop him, and Appleton's not reacted to it positively and has decided to stick with Maxwell. That's the only logical explanation I can put on why he's playing Maxwell at the moment. Because Maxwell isn't the same as he was 2 years ago. For me, he's dropped.
This is the
he's
big
not
thing.
Dropped
this
a lot,
is the big
but he
thing for
dropped.
me, Tim. This is the big thing for me. What Tony Lawson's just said, he has no command of the area and he scares the defence. Nail on head there, Tony. He's just, yeah. He's
and listen, this is we're back. We've got ourselves back in the Championship, and I don't want us to lose our place, and we are at risk of it. Lose our place in the Championship because of, the fact that the manager can't find it in him to pick the best keeper because of other reasons.
I saw him in Costa after the game. I went to I parked up in the retail park. I had Eddie with me and mate Ben and his son. So we just thought we'd go into a Costa and let the traffic die down and have a drink. And I was just jadedly sipping my latte. And
very middle class of you, that, John.
Well, it was actually in a takeaway cup, which annoyed me. I said I didn't want it in a takeaway cup. I want it in a proper cup.
They thought you were going to throw it.
They said, "Well, we're shutting at 6." I was like, "So fucking what?" Anyway, that's by the by. I was just drinking my coffee. When you have to double take, and I looked across the way and I thought, he looks just like Grimmy. I said to Ben, "Is that Grimmy over there?" He looks back and he said, "Yeah, it's him." So we used the kids as a beeline to go over and say something to him on the way out. Frame it as if we're just going over there to get a picture, a selfie with them, which he did. And I said to him, "Why the fucking hell are you not playing?" And I could try to explain the look he had on his face. It was like as if to say, "I have no idea why." He just said his exact words were, "He's just not picking me." That's what he said.
He did like a few comments where people alluded to the same analysis that you just come out with there in varying formats on Twitter. I think he subsequently unliked them, but he's clearly extreme. Well, were you there when we were speaking to his father-in-law at Coventry?
No.
I think you were outside. It was at half time, and he was saying he's so frustrated because he doesn't.
Well, he's done nothing wrong.
Everybody wants to play, doesn't he? Everybody wants to play, but I think he thinks he's been dropped undeservedly. And the problem is, what happens if he puts a transfer request in and says, I want to go and play somewhere where I'm going to be starting keeper." He's in his early 20s. I think we've spoken before about he's clearly got ability to improve. He's a player we could end up getting millions for. We're never going to get millions for Maxwell. So if you're looking at the model of bringing young players in, playing them, turning them over and bringing next young players in, keeping Maxwell in, who isn't the better keeper against Grimshaw, who is the young better keeper who has got the value moving forward, makes no commercial sense even before you start looking at the football sense. It's mental.
Yeah.
Well, I think I could probably come up with a some form of defence for just about everything that's laid at Appleton's door. I'm not saying I would necessarily believe 100% in all of those defences, but just about everything. If you get the most sort of ardent Appleton out person, and he can shout at me, "What about this? What about this? What about this? What about this?" Is I can come up with some sort of defence for almost everything, apart from even the lack of subs at Wigan, apart from the fact that he seems to have dumped Grimmy in the bin. Because if you look at our under contract players, are probably, you could make a pretty good case for Grimmy being the best of them. You know, Yates, Grimmy, Marvin's fell to bits, but, you know, Marvin last year, Yates, Grimmy, Marvin, and then maybe the potential of Carey. And then apart from that, everybody else is much of a muchness. But we're throwing that player in the bin, and I don't get it.
You know,
it's got to be Appleton's undoing that. If he's not careful, it could be his undoing, because the logic that we're applying to the scenario. Listen, let's not beat about the bush. Our owner will have his own views as well, and he'll see it, and it defies explanation to me. It defied. I started to have my issues even before we went on the losing run. You know, where I was thinking, but since we've gone on that 4-game run, obviously 3 before Saturday, I was genuinely thinking, why is he not playing? Why is he not playing? And then, you know, we've obviously saw Middlesbrough. I mean, it was horrific, and he still doesn't drop him. Now, whether in his logic he's thinking, well, there's one more game, and then we've got a break, and then I can bring Grimshaw back after the break in the run up to Christmas. I don't know, but I don't get the impression that that's, you know, all the speakers effectively. I know he won't want to undermine his player in public, but it's almost like nailing his reputation.
He undermined Grimshaw in public. He dropped Grimshaw and said, yeah, he's had a few iffy games. Yeah. Dropped him in public and said he hadn't played well after the game, which at the time I stood up for, because I thought, well, you can roll the dice. The defense is shit. I've already made this point, but he did it with no great ceremony, and he was pretty adamant that Grimmy was at fault for a few things that had gone on. So, you know, Maxwell, we've done that experiment. We've tried to see if the experienced head tightens up the defense. It clearly hasn't. So why can't you roll the dice in the same way and say, right, Maxie, you know, we're going to chuck Grimmy in. It's his turn, as he's clearly done to Grimmy. I don't get it, but and I also assume.
And to be fair, he's done that to Maxwell in the past, hasn't he? He's dropped Maxwell for Grimshaw in the past. I'm incredibly frustrating. And like you say, it's probably... and the problem is, as soon as he starts coming out... I haven't read that stuff today. As soon as he starts coming out with that tripe, which is clearly isn't... You know, your 7-year-old... Your 7... Sorry, I forgot how old his son is now, John. But your 7 or 8-year-old son will know that Grimm is a better keeper than Maxwell. It's not rocket science we're talking about here.
I think he's actually said that. Why is Grimmy not playing?
Of course he will. Of course he would, because it's bloody obvious. It's staring every single person who watches football on a reasonably regular basis in the face.
Look at the reaction. Look at the reaction when Maxwell went down, and the whole of that away end started going, duh, 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 Daniel Grimshaw, and you know. And I'd kind of put it from the back of my mind, but as soon as Grimmy got up, I was like, yeah, go on, Grimmy. And then I felt a bit tight on Maxwell, you know, because I don't particularly want Maxwell to get hurt just so that I can see the goalkeeper I want. But I was kind of thinking, I hope he's
stay down.
I hope he's putting his eye here. And yeah, exactly.
That's bad, that. But yeah, should have brought Stuart Moore in, Tim.
Well,
should listen to me.
Big Stu could get the call. He'd probably get a call ahead of Grimshaw at the moment, I think. Big
Stu deserves to go up again. He deserves the shirt more than Maxwell, I think. Given Appleton's
all those tremendous performances he's had for Geisley were affecting the shirt.
So, you know, my cousin who listens to this pod came up to me at Wigan, and he said, them two were really hated on Stuart Moore, weren't they? And I said, yeah. I think he's like shagged one of the misses or something. They really hate him.
Nothing personal against Stuart. We're just Grimmy fans.
Right, let's move on. Third point, Marv off again. Tim, let's come to you with this one. Was Dougal at fault for this, or was he? Does he share the lion's share of the fault?
It wasn't a great header. I think the problem is that ball was bobbling around quite a lot, wasn't it? It was bobbling around, and he went to head it back, but I don't think it quite was where he was expecting it to be at the point in time he did it, and so it didn't quite have the force on it. I think that he would have ideally wanted. I have to say, and listen, I know there'll be people who say it is a red, but I do not think that's a red card. I think the ball's coming down. Marv's got his foot. He's only got his foot a foot off the floor, and he's gone to control the ball. And is it McLean? Sorry, I've forgotten who went in on him. Is it McLean that goes in on him? Isn't it? It is, isn't it?
Don't know. Some Wigan player.
Whoever it was. They were fast. They came in quicker than Marv was expecting, and he seemed to almost like pull back a bit from it. To be honest, I think he could see what was happening. There was no malicious intent whatsoever. I don't think he can be construed as last man, because I think somebody would have come in and covered. And so I'm left thinking, if that had been anywhere else on the pitch, then in that particular area, I don't think he'd have gone. And I think it was a mistake. And it ruined the game. End of.
Those were exact words I used. Ruined the game.
It was
the
never,
ref's very quick to get his red out. He should have composed himself and had a quick think about it. Maybe conferred with his linesman. But he couldn't wait to get that red out, could he? Couldn't wait.
There's no way that was malicious. Never. He hasn't got a malicious bone in his body, has he? Now, sometimes when it's last man, you go, don't you? And we saw it at Sheffield, but that was a second yellow. It was no worse than what he did at Sheffield United. And I tell you what, if that happened to one of our players, I wouldn't have been shouting for the opposition to get sent off in that scenario. It was a clumsy challenge, but he was in the driving seat to get the ball. It wasn't like he was trying to nick in on let's say it's McLean. If it was or it wasn't, doesn't really matter. But if McLean had been in the driving seat to get the ball and he's come in with his feet up, that's a completely different matter. But the ball's coming to him, he's gone to meet it, and then if it is McLean's the one who's come in quick and caught him unawares. That's not a sending off. End of.
Mitch, your views?
It wasn't sending off. I think the key point is the last thing Tim said was that at the ground, I kind of went, what the hell's gone on there? Because he didn't throw himself into a tackle. He wasn't moving forward in an aggressive or violent way. He hadn't it wasn't like, say, Carey's trip at Burnley, where he'd thrown himself full length to trip a player up. He'd gone to control a difficult ball, and if anything, their player, when I watched it back, their player seems to almost make more aggressive intent towards the ball. I mean, the ball's there to be fought for. Goes over Marvin because Marvin's not quite done what I think the player thinks he's going to do. And he's been sent off for being hesitant. He's been sent off for sort of dithering a bit on what he's going to do with the ball. And the other thing that really pissed me off was the ref had started off by letting everything go. He'd started off by being really lenient and letting the game flow. And then the first moment he had to make a decision, he chucks a red card out.
And subbed himself at half time. Andy Davis was his name.
Do we actually know why they changed the ref?
I think it was because the international football authorities that hate us were terrified that he would do something to level things up in the second half. So they thought, well, we better pull him off and put another ref on instead, so that won't happen. I think that's why it was.
Sounds plausible to me, that.
It's yet another shock of a referee, but I think, as you said, Tim, it ruined the game. That's what pissed me off more than anything.
Yeah,
you ruined the game. The game's ruined.
Yeah, you look forward to it. You go all day, go out. There's 3 coaches came from, I know there's loads of Blackpool everywhere. 3 coaches came from Polton, which was the biggest turnout for an away game from Polton for any of the games that we've done. with coaches running. And then you get there within 17 minutes, you know that you're just going to play a rearguard action for the rest of the game. And you're not going to see your team play the football in the way that you want to see them. And
you don't mind if it's a proper scything tackle or it's a, an obvious score, stops an obvious goal scoring opportunity. You'll say, right, okay, fair enough. But
it can work sometimes. If it's the second half, it doesn't have a massive difference. But when it happens so early in the game, there's absolutely no way that even the 10 fittest men in the world are going to really be able to hold out against 11 for the thick end of 85 minutes with stoppage time.
But we were down to 10 men.
Cometh the hour, cometh the man.
Cometh the hour, cometh the man. Big Gaz, boom. There's only one man who can talk us through this sublime moment, and that's you, Mr. Mitch.
This is the one he put to the left, wide to the left. We're going to talk about now.
He did pull one wide first. I think he was just getting his, what's it called? When cricketers get the sight or something when they hit the bat. He was just getting his sights on the goals and putting a marker down. And 34 minutes, blam! What a strike!
Well, it was just sensational, wasn't it? And it was everything that you kind of hope Gaz would be, but that we've quite rarely seen him take a ball down on the edge of the box. He'll take the ball down on the edge of the box, but he'll so often shuffle it sideways or whatever. But just the turn and then the power on the shot, it was like the West Brom penalty combined with the sort of the touch of, I don't know, who's good at taking the ball down in world football, the touch of John Charles and and his own West Brom penalty. He nearly broke the net, and I genuinely. That one. Actually, no, it wasn't that one. It was the West Brom penalty in the cup in lockdown, where that keeper had been dicking around, and he just looked at the keeper and then nearly killed him.
You can't beat that thud though on that penalty.
You can't.
The thud was very similar when his boot hit the ball at Wigan. I liked the fact that he used his strength and determination to get the fuck out of my way, centre half. This is mine.
Yeah, and he'd been doing that all day. He'd been levering the centre half off the ball all day, and I think they actually switched round who was on Gaz in the second half because Tilt was on him in the second half, and I'm not sure it was Tilt that he beat. And Tilt actually did a lot. A, he was crocked in the second half, I think, and B, I think Tilt did a better job on him in the second half. I could be wrong on that, but there's two things. Is one, I nearly passed out after we'd scored because I was that happy, and two, I got leapt on by two or three people who I don't actually know shouting, "It's Madine!" which was absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Oh God, made myself cough. But it was a great highlight of the day, wasn't it? In the way end, limbs, and he's doing that. To the crowd.
It was a good ball for Patino to start off with, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And you had a little bit of the Gaz shithousery to which just puts like the icing on the cake of the goal, doesn't it? So I think there was an argument that it was a foul, but listen, he's using his strength, he's creating his sort of position. It was a 1950s centre forwards goal that you see all the time, isn't it? It's a Nat Lofthouse, it was Stan Mortensen, it was a John Charles, as we've talked about, where they just basically bludgeon the way through and then let rip.
So Tim's basically just says Gary Madine is the modern day equivalent to Stan Mortensen. Well, I'll take that.
You'll take that with you.
That's literally why I like him, because he's a player out of time, and he's a player from a bygone era of football, and you don't get many Gary Madines anymore.
What we need to do is we need to get him some knee-length shorts and
a pipe.
He'll only pull him up into his hot pants as he runs on. That, to be fair, a pipe.
Anyway.
Charles.
I'm quite surprised you're not stalking him on the Playa del America strip at the moment, Mitch. We're not tempted to fly out and.
Well, use the Patreon funds to fly Mitch over there.
I don't think I'd last very long in Tenerife with Gary Madine, to be honest. I barely managed a night in Wigan.
We'll come to that shortly. Right, next topic, which I have entitled Corner Fiasco. Tim, corner fiasco.
Well, you mean the corner that wasn't a corner to start off with?
Yeah, there is that.
So I think I'm going to. I don't know which player it was for Wigan, but they pushed the ball past Jerry, and Jerry sort of stuck with them a bit, and they both sort of tumbled into each other, didn't they, as the ball hit the line? And
Jerry's shepherding it out.
Jerry never touched the ball, and as soon as he got up, he could see what the linesman was doing. And he went, no, didn't touch it. And he didn't touch it. I was right in front of him. No way did he touch that. And it's almost, you could almost, you don't need telepathy to know what happens when you concede a corner that isn't a corner. And so
no one could have.
It came to be.
Not even Gypsy Petulenko herself could have predicted that, though.
Well, maybe she could predict. We could have predicted the goal, but
a goal maybe, but not the way it went in.
Absolute fuck up on every single level. I mean, how anybody scores direct from a corner when you've got players on the front post and the keeper on the front post? It's like everybody abrogated responsibility completely, and just like I think Maxwell. I'm having that, am I? Maxwell, he definitely lived up to his name, Flapswell, there, because he was just. I don't whether he thought the player at the front post, whoever that was. I think it was two actually.
There was three. I think there was three.
Three was one of them would have attacked it, but it was almost like too many cooks. There was too many people there. Nobody took responsibility. They all looked around expecting somebody else to deal with it, and most importantly, and almost unforgivably from a keeper's perspective, one thing you do not let is a ball come past you on the front post. That's where it was. It was like barking mad that nobody makes any effort to go anywhere near it.
I'm more pointing the blame of the finger of blame, Mitch, at the defence rather than Maxwell. How three of them can allow that ball to come into the box, and maybe Maxwell's just been flabbergasted that it's there, and by the time you've seen the ball, it's gone in. I don't know. What's your view?
It snuck in at the far post as well, didn't it? Because it was the way in real time, I kind of went, that's not a fucking corner. Right, here we go. Shit, that's quite close. Fuck, it's gone through them all. Like, no, it's going across the face of goal. Fuck, it's gone in. And it was just how it snuck in at the far post. And there must have been 5 chances to get a foot on it and do something, and everybody just watched. And that's like, it's like, was it Luton or was it Middlesbrough where it was Borough where they scored a goal just by running at us, and everyone just watched them run at us, and then they scored. And it was a different goal, but it was the same vibe of sort of we'll all get together and point at each other and sort of point at somebody else and do things that football, like when kids go out on the pitch and they do the pointing and they do stuff, but they don't actually know what they're doing. And it was our defence is a bit like that, where they don't actually really appear to know what they're doing. They just point and sort of pat each other on the back and clap their hands at each other.
I suppose you can cut them a tiny bit of slack with the fact that it was Dougal playing centre half, and we literally had one recognised centre half on the pitch, and he's a bit shit as well. That's the whole thing at the moment, though. In a nutshell, isn't it? Is how much slack do you cut for what the circumstances are and the repeated bad luck, and how much do you put down to the fact that there are also some fundamental things that don't seem to be working? So
you can say, well, Dougal was at centre half, but then you go to the game before and you go, well, what do you cut them slack for there? And the game before, what do you cut them slack? And we conceded a lot of goals, and we haven't had Dougal at centre half for all of them. And actually, I thought Dougs did all right at centre half for a player that has probably never played centre half in his life before. And actually, to be honest, I thought the team collectively did all right, but we've been undone again by a calamitous goal. This is how calamitous that our season is that my mate who doesn't even support another championship club, who I drive to work with, finds it amusing because when I get in the car on a Monday morning, he goes, "What went wrong this week?" And I went, "Straight from a corner, Joe." And he went, "Oh." And that's that he's finding our defence amusing from such a distance. He's not even watching any of the highlights or anything. So,
oh, by the way, John, we've been pulled on the Timism by Gurney.
Abdicated.
But he didn't say it. I said abdicated.
Yeah,
abdicated.
I wouldn't have done abdicated, Gurney.
Which is to basically. Is to fail to do what's required is probably the best definition.
There you go. So, Gurney, I'm afraid it was a Timism. I give the great man one there, one per game at least. Right, let's move on. Next one. On tilt. Anyone who's played a fruit machine, so not a fruit machine, a pinball machine will know what I'm on about here. It's when you're getting angry and the inevitable happens. And Tim, I think with the number of balls that Wigan were relentlessly playing into the box, for me, it was only a matter of time before they eventually scored. And as for Wigan, what was his name? The chap that came on the preview show, he said, our only way of scoring goals is by crosses into the box. And that's literally all that they did throughout the match.
And they did it very effectively, didn't they? And whatever else I think of McLean, he's very, very good at getting the ball in and making effective crosses rather than just hopeful crosses. But it was that they were coming in from both sides. And to be fair, I think the defence stood up to everything that came to them relatively manfully. But there's only so many times. And to be fair, I was like, this isn't with the benefit of hindsight. I was saying this before they scored. This, how many corners and how many crosses are we letting in? And at some point, one of them is going to go in. But law of averages says that one's going to go in. And it was crushingly disappointing that it occurred. I think it was at the 89th minute, and it was tilt. I mean, last thing you want is an ex-Blackpool player scoring against you in the 89th minute in what is a very, very important game. And it was crushing, really. I think that's probably the way I felt at the time. I was absolutely crushed because that's a big 6 points of that. And there was no way back at 89th minute. Yes, there was quite a few. I think it was 5 or 6 minute stoppages. They
just kept the ball.
The only thing is it on? I don't know. It's only 7 because, unfortunately, being very unprofessional, I've not looked at the.
There it is. That's what you're going to say. No subs.
Yeah,
Let's move on.
We can discuss how we get into the scenario where that's happening in the latter part of the game, can't we?
So you've stolen my thunder there, Tim, but I'll let you off. A nice segue into that. What you have just mentioned, Mitch. We'll come to you on this. 2 parts to this 7th point, I guess. No subs, which, as Tim has alluded to there, may have contributed to the fact that we were being constantly overrun and under a barrage of crosses. No subs made by Michael Appleton. Bizarrely, no substitutes made when players out there were literally down on their arse. Madine being one. We've got options on the bench to potentially hurt them.
Do we have options on the bench?
Well, we've got CJ, the shopping trolley.
Yeah, but the shopping trolley can't play a position. He comes on and runs around, and he's the very definition of a luxury player who you bring on when you want a goal. CJ possibly, but I'll tell you why Gaz stayed on. And I mean, Gaz went he got a crack in the back, or he landed funny on about 50 minutes, and he wasn't even walking properly after that. He was like holding his side all the time, and it was like torture watching him out there. But the reason he stayed on is because that is, if you take him off with Ekpiteta off the scene, that is a tiny side, and they just kept flinging balls into the box and corner after corner. And I literally think Appleton thought he couldn't take Madine off because we would concede instantly at a corner.
100%.
Could have played him centre half.
Well, maybe you could, but I mean, it's getting to a joke. I mean, I said it on the other on previous podcast. It is actually a bit ridiculous that Madine is still, our number one key player, when I think everybody in the world expected this season to be a kind of transition away from Madine at the age of 32 and not being particularly mobile. But now he appears to be the key striker and the key defender as well. And I'm not even joking when I say that. So I think he left Madine on for that. The shopping trolley can't play a position.
Look down the subs list then.
Garbutt, what would be the point of bringing Garbutt on? Ward was the one that I thought was probably going to come on at some point and shore up the midfield. But to be fair, for two players who are very inexperienced and more attack-minded players, I thought Carey and Patino both put a real shift in. I think Ward was the one. Trusty, well, do you trust Trusty? That's the question. And, CJ, again, he's not the world's most defensively minded player. I think the wide players were where you needed to make a change. I think Madine was where the whole crowd wanted to make a change, but actually I could see why he was leaving him on, because he's literally got nobody else above about 6.
Well, there's another. Listen, being Appleton's defence advocate at this point of the show, I think the other reason you don't make changes in the forward positions on the pitch is that you've got players there who will actually keep the ball for you. And what you've got with Corbin and what you've got with CJ is effectively, nicely, I'm not headless chickens who will maybe run with the ball, maybe lose the ball. They're very unlikely to keep the ball for you. And what we're seeing as time goes on is that there's a core of players who Appleton trusts. We spoke about this on the last show, didn't we, about how there's players out there. And to be fair, one of them came on, Williams, and we haven't spoken about him, who I thought did extremely well, to be fair to him. But he didn't. Appleton has a core of players he trusts, and I think he's reluctant to take them off. And I think it's right he's reluctant to take Madine off because he knew there was corners coming in and he needed Madine in there for those. But he's also somebody who will hold the ball up, just as Jerry will hold the ball up, and to a certain degree, so will Lavery. And I think when you start putting people on who, we weren't chasing the goal, we were trying to hold on to what we've got. So I could sort of understand the logic, but the flip side is certain players were so knackered that could they actually contribute effectively, and that's where you've got the conundrum as to what you do. So I'm actually not going to have a go at Appleton for not making subs. I will have a go at him for playing an out-of-form keeper ahead of one of the best young keepers in the country and leave it at that. So that's my take on it.
Okay. Sacked in the morning was the chant that rang out on the way end in the final whistle. I was actually quite shocked to hear that. It wasn't everyone singing it either. I wasn't. I was a bit...
It caused a bit of friction in the stands, actually.
Yeah. And what percentage would you say? 50%?
I think it was less than that. I think it was more like 30. Yeah. But it was more than I thought, and it was quite vocal, obviously. But there was people actually remonstrating with each other, with people who didn't think it was appropriate. Actually, going up to people saying, shut the F up or whatever they were saying. And it was causing conflict. And that was just the bit of the ground I was in. I don't know what happened elsewhere. But I thought it was we showed a lack of class as fans, I think, when you do stuff like that, because that wasn't Appleton's. Subject to the observation about the keeper, that wasn't Appleton's fault we lost at Wigan. We lost at Wigan because of that refereeing decision in the 17th minute. That's why we lost. Somebody said in the chat, his Wigan mate said we'd have won easily if we'd have been 11v11. And I actually genuinely believe we'd have won that game 11 v 11.
I'll just jump into him. First half, we played well first half, and there were so many moments where it felt like with an extra player on the pitch, we'd have absolutely had the overlap. We've had the moment, we've had the pressure. And first half, it didn't feel like we had 10 men at all. In fact, first half, it felt like we had more men than we had against Middlesbrough. And Middlesbrough won it, the absolutely shocking one. And how can I put it? I thought we could have gone in 2 or 3 up at half time with 11 men without question, because they were awful. And I think that's what's frustrating is they were terrible. They are us. They're on this dreadful run. They've just sacked the manager. They've got no confidence. And we went out. We really mixed it with them. We're better. So yeah, I'm with you. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that such a long interruption.
You didn't say that because of my sigh there. No, I don't know why. It was just a large intake of breath. It was not relevant to your monologue, bitch.
I think, Harry's saying in the chat, Appleton's not the man for the job. I think that's a different point to whether you actually really have a go at him about the substitute point. I think I'm not happy about his condescending comments towards people who are actually making legitimate points. Deal with them, but don't suggest people haven't got a clue. He's got his Achilles heel over this Grimshaw Appleton thing. It's going to be his undoing, in my view, if he carries on with it, most certainly. But I'm not going to have a go at him about making what I think is a logical decision, which, let's get it right, we were a couple of minutes away from it working. So, the reality is, and Feig says in there about Madine, it's an issue of our recruitment. The reality is, in any corner or any defensive free kick, Madine is our most effective player. He is. He's the best header of the ball we've got, and the number of times he clears the ball in those situations, or gets his head on it, or most certainly neutralizes their attacking threat. It's virtually every one. So if you're going to face a barrage of that, then even if he's starting to limp, even if he's less mobile than he was in the first half, I can see the logic of a manager saying, I'm keeping him on because I need him for that reason. And I'll because Corbano's not going to give you that. CJ's not going to give you that. And that is a decision I can respect and understand, as distinct from other ones I can't. So it's defending him in relation to this doesn't necessarily mean that I defend him overall in the way that he's approaching things at the moment. It's more just saying, look, I'm not gonna have a go at a guy just for the sake of it, when I could actually, if I was in that, and listen, not at this level. I've managed kids football teams, I manage walking football teams at the moment, and you make decisions, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. You don't deserve getting slagged off for every decision you make. Just the ones that are indefensible. And there are indefensible decisions you made in this game. But that, not bringing on a sub, is not one of them.
The under-10s team I manage has only conceded 1 goal in 7 games.
Well, when he gets sacked, John, I think there's a call. There'll be a call from all round Polton for them to look from within rather than without.
Hashtag just saying. We are moving up to under 9-a-side next season. So if anyone wants to join the winning team of the Polton under 10s Blacks, if you've got any talented players out there and they want to
do we have a big under 10s audience, John?
Yeah, well, hopefully some parents are listening.
Some of Eddie's mates might be tuning in. He might be doing a bit of networking for the pod.
We had a little conversation that we need to get 2 more players in next season, so I thought I'd get it in there early.
Don't get our recruitment team on it, John.
You stole my thunder then. I was just about to come in with that. Who's on your recruitment team?
Okay, let's move on to player ratings. Who wants Chris Maxwell? Tim, go on. You've been most vocal about the goalies. You go with Chris Maxwell.
I think I've got for that goal. How bad? I'm just trying to think about the rest of his game. 5.
5,
You can't give him a 1, Matthew. It wasn't that. It was one mistake.
There's someone who's saying 1. We've got a -10 and a 1 coming in the chat. Come on. 4 minus. I'd give him
-10.
Right, Callum Connolly, Mitch.
Um,
Nearly got injured booting the ball away.
I can't remember anything. I'm giving these scores on a game that I've tried to banish from my memory. I don't remember him doing anything particularly terribly bad, so I'll give him a 6. Is that right? Wrong? Don't know.
6+, 7 minus.
6+. I'll go 6+.
Yeah. He was steady, wasn't he, Callum?
Yeah.
Callum, I think, to be fair.
Big Marv, Tim.
It's harsh. Do you think we should give him a score? I don't actually hold him culpable for the sending off, to be fair. And when you look at he contributed, obviously only took part up for 17 minutes. I don't think I can actually score him.
Well, look at his reaction. The most telling thing on the video is his reaction when he makes a challenge and he just goes back into position, and then the ref shows a red card, and he's not faking that reaction. He's just like completely what?
I think we should skip over him because
I think we should skip over Marv.
It's impossible to give him a score, and I don't agree he gets a shit score because he got sent off, because I actually don't think he did. It was a fault. I just think it was a bit clumsy at worst.
Okay. Reese Williams. Have I even got a banner for him? I haven't. Reese Williams did okay, Mitch.
Yeah, he did do okay. I think I'm right in saying Tilt got above him for the goal.
He did. Yes, he did. And actually, I think he was there on the near post as well. So maybe not.
But I think he also,
apart from causing 2 goals, he did all right.
Well, look, I think that first goal was the fault of about 6 people and possibly the way we're coaching the defence. But I thought he did a lot of the things that he hasn't been doing. He was quite decisive. He dealt with the ball, quickly. He didn't dither around. He put his head in. He made some tackles, and he did all right. I will give him. If I've given Callum 6+, I will give him. Does he deserve a 7?
I would say so.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I think that's actually his best game for Blackpool, to say. Although I hadn't quite realised he was the challenging player for Tilts. But it's always difficult when you're the defender and somebody's coming in.
Someone's got to run on you.
They're
running, they're getting the jump, they're getting ahead of you. It's really difficult to defend that.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, being out jumped by Tilt is, he's not a little lad, is he? He's not like he's a big unit, and he scored plenty for us in that way of popping up in that way. So he's a player that does that, and he's a player who've done that to a lot of defenders. So it's not like he got out jumped by some tiny little fella, Brian Griffiths or something.
Jamie Allen for Coventry. His name's stuck in my head for some reason. He was a midget. Right, where were we? Dom Thompson. Tim did okay again, I thought.
Yeah, listen, he's come in for some criticism, and and we've given it him, and I think you've got to turn around and say I felt that he made a positive contribution towards that performance, and if we'd walked away from that game with a 1-1 draw, or if we kept 11 players on the pitch and potentially won the game, we are a bit down, but we'd be singing his praises. And I'm going to give him a creditable 7+.
That's what I was thinking. Bolton FC's very own Dom Thompson, in fact. I need to get him down to training now his form's turned. See if he's going to give us any tips. Right, Sir Kenneth of Dougal, Mitch, filled in admirably at centre half.
Easy for you to say. No, he did. He did all right, did Dukes. It was weird because I thought, all right, Dukes has gone back while they sort out what to do. And I thought, shit, we haven't got any more defenders. And then Dukes just stayed there all game and did a decent job. As we've already discussed, possibly dropped it a bit short for Marvin, but I don't think it's one of those those sort of. I don't think it was a dreadful mistake. It was just one of those things, and did all right. Do we add a mark on considering he was out of position? Do we give him the mark we would have given to Marvin plus his own mark considered out of position? I don't know.
This is an algorithm that has not been written, so no. Or maybe it needs to be written.
I feel for playing out of position and doing all right and holding out 7+. Is that fair?
I was thinking 8, but I'll take 7.
Well, 8, to be honest, Tim, 8 was the number that came to my head first. And I thought, well, because of this ridiculous charade of giving all the players a number, then everyone in the chat shouting at us, then I better mediate my mark. And then, we had the other week where John told us all off about our marks. So I thought I better moderate my mark and go to 7+.
Yeah, don't let Tim influence you. International president of the Kenny Dougal fan club. Slight bias.
I'd have given him a 9.
I'd have given him a 7+. 9. Sonny, Carey, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, again, we're dealing with a slightly surreal scenario because obviously Sir Kenneth got removed and redeployed elsewhere, and so that left, I felt, Carey and Patino with quite a big job to do in the middle, the two of them, and as we spoke in the first half, I think they actually did an incredibly good job. We didn't actually feel that we were a man down. But the problem is, as the game goes on and your legs get tighter and tighter, that's when the difference between having 10, 11 really starts to, probably more so than if you lose a player in the 60th, 70th, 80th minute. Excuse me, when you lose somebody so early, it's devastating because I'm not saying it's unheard of, but I'd say it's almost unheard of for a team to lose a player in the first half like that and win the game. It's incredibly difficult to do because these guys are all really fit and they know where to find the space. And you're chasing shadows a lot of the time. You're chasing the ball, and that tires you as well. So I thought, anyway, I've waffled, but I think the same thing applies to both of them. I think they did an incredibly good job in depleted numbers. I'll give him an 8+.
Is elongated the correct word to use that score? No, it probably isn't. Is it?
I've spoken more than I intended to and stretched it out, so I think elongated will do.
Okay. The most elongated player rating ever in the Seaside.
Well, no, I think Mitch probably holds that record somewhere along the line.
Charlie Patino.
Well, pretty much everything Tim's just said about Sonny, to be honest. I think he also had a really good game, particularly after a couple of games where he's looked like he was sort of either sick or strolling around believing he was going to be the England captain. And I think it was probably the former. I thought he was back to, well, not necessarily back to what you think he's going to be, but he was demonstrating, getting really stuck in. Great ball for the goal. A couple of other really nice balls, but also playing his part in what was actually a really combative midfield made out of two players that you wouldn't pick if you're gonna pick the combative midfielders at our club. You'd go Connolly, Dougal, Stewart, Bridcut, Ward. These two are probably right at the bottom of the list of who's the combative midfielders, and yet I thought the Dawes did a great job. So I think whatever Tim gave, was it 8+? I think Patino deserves the same. I thought the two of them were a great pair.
Just before we move on to Lavery, I don't know whether anybody saw this, but I got something sent to me today where, and listen, I haven't had a chance to check the veracity of the information yet, but there's a report in the boot room saying that Barcelona want Patino from Arsenal.
What?
Now, listen, I haven't had a chance to check it, but it was sent to me by one of the guys in my WhatsApp group, and so apparently Barcelona have inquired about him. My only concern with him is if we're anchored at the bottom of the league come Christmas, let's say we lose to, we're going to discuss things, but if we lose to Birmingham and is it Sheffield and Sunderland. Will Arsenal look at where we're at and think, is it the best place for him to be? That's
You're
my
right,
concern.
You're right, Tim. I'm just reading it now. Yeah, sorry, go on.
So, yeah, and if, so when you talk about him, was he thinking about being an England captain? Maybe he's thinking about being Barcelona captain. I don't know. But listen, it's great that we've got a player playing for us where these type of reports are going about. And he's obviously still a very young lad and he's still finding his feet. And he's clearly, as we've spoke about on other pods, very grounded and clearly loving his time at Blackpool. But I'm just slightly concerned that our league position might influence whether he gets the old... have you ever seen the Gong Show where they get the hook?
The hook, yeah. Drag him
and
back.
Whether he'll get hooked back to Arsenal. That's my only slight concern.
Well, it's all right. We've got Grant Ward, so we're fine.
Well, yeah, we have, haven't we? So and
we've got the life coach. We've got the life coach to come back.
I'm sure our recruitment team have
that's what we needed. We needed a 1 hour.
Noticed no one's. What are you drinking, Tim? I'm on Vimto again tonight.
I must admit, I've broken my abstinence tonight, and I did have a G&T, though I finished it now. So
I've not drunk on here since
since Kevin told you not to.
Called people who drink at home are losers.
We needed a 1 hour Kevin Stewart uplifting life talk tonight, not this blinking miserable reflection on us losing every week.
There's an opportunity.
Yeah, it's an
Kevin
opportunity.
on the pod.
They're not problems, they're opportunities, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right, Shane Lavery, who we're up to, Mitch. Was quite a terrier again, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was good. People, there was somebody in the chat saying that Lavs needed to come off and put CJ on, but I thought Lavs played really well. First half, he scared the hell out of Wigan. They didn't know what to do with him. He had about 3 really good runs, and then second half, obviously they shifted stuff around, and he got pinned back a bit more. So yeah, I think Lavs did all right. 7 for Lavs, is that reasonable?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Good.
Yeah. Fortunately, Mitch, Tim's got Gary Madine.
It's Madine.
It's
It
Madine.
is.
And it's my man of the match.
20.
Listen, I think he did an incredible job. I think, at the beginning of the season, Appleton said, "Look, you're not going to be playing regularly. You haven't got it in you," and the fact that it's not necessarily all down to his performances, but the fact that we're having to rely on him week in, week out, and not just, but for the most part, he's playing he's playing the 90 minutes or close to the 90 minutes. And I think he's pushing himself as far as he can as a player, and really putting a shift in for the team. And I think I've seen a couple of pictures of him enjoying himself on the strip in Playa del Americas, and I think he deserves that break because I think him and certain other players have really put the bodies on the line for the club over the last 6 weeks, 2 months, while we've had to struggle with this crisis of availability. And I'm going to give him a 9. I think mainly just because he's given everything, and he scored a good goal. He's helped the defence out, and I think he's a very influential player on the pitch and off the pitch. And but I don't think he felt that he was going to be asked to play as much as he has been, and I don't think it's it for his long-term good, to be honest. But he's doing it, and every credit to him.
Yeah, 9 for me and man of the match. Jerry Yates, Mitch.
Well, a bit like Callum Connolly, I can't really remember Jerry playing particularly. I can't remember him doing anything wrong. It was obviously the injustice for the corner, but apart from that, I can't particularly remember him doing anything. I can't remember him getting in the box that much. So I'm gonna say, what did I give Cal 6+? I'll give Jerry 6+ then.
Yeah,
6. Yeah.
And to wrap the show, manager rating. This should be interesting. If you're on the stream, give us your rating in the comments. It'd be interesting to see what everyone says. But let's start with you, Tim.
See, I'm not having this sub malarkey for the reason because I can understand it, but I can't understand. I'm torn between.
Give us a score, all right, Tim. Give us a score if he's played Grimmy, and give us his score for playing Maxwell.
If he played Grimmy, I'd have given him an 8. And because he's played Maxwell, I'm giving him a 4. Because it defies logic.
Yeah. That's a brutal takedown. Mitch.
Yeah, I think what concerned me is we were worse second half than we were first half. So when the players had kind of sorted themselves out a bit, and we had quite a spirited first half, then they went in at half time, and then we were palpably worse second half. I think that worries me a little bit. I think Tim's probably nailed it before, to be honest. You can't nail it all at his door. You know, it was a better performance than a couple of recent performances, but then that's not really saying that much, is it? So 4.
Okay, so just before we head off, there was a few incidents involving the GMP, Greater Manchester Police this time. My nephew, 17, 18, smashed upon the shins with the baton just for walking down a path, trying to walk around a bunch of people, indiscriminately hit with a baton. Mitch, I believe you had an incident with them as well.
Yeah, so I was coming out, as I mentioned, I sort of had met up with my mate from Wigan before the game, and after the game he rang me up, said, I'll meet you. I'll try and make it round to the away end if I can get through, and I'll meet you on the bridge. So I said, yeah, all right. And met up with him, and we were just walking along. And we'd actually bypassed, when they held the pool fans back, as you're coming out, they were like blocking the path and sort of holding Blackpool fans back. My mate had gone to one of the stewards, were Wigan fans, and showed his Wigan season ticket, and they'd just let us out through the car park. So I was thinking, hey. So we'd walk round past all the pool fans, and we came up, and they were just letting Wigan fans out. And my mate sort of lives over the bridge over the canal. So he stops and says to the copper, come go over the bridge. He goes, no. And he went, why? And he went, well, we're closed. And he went, well, why is it closed? And the copper says something to him like, just fucking get out of the way, all right? And I said, there's no need to speak to anyone like that. And he said to me something like, I didn't ask your opinion. And I said something back. I didn't lose my rag. I said something like, there's literally no need to scream in our faces. And then he went, just get out of the fucking way. We're trying to get a van here. And I said something like, we're not in prison, mate. You're not a prison officer. You don't have to speak like that. And he picked me up by the scruff of the thing and went, I told you to move. And at that point, my mate sort of stepped in and went, what are you doing? And the other copper grabs hold of my mate and hurled him across the path, which, without going into too much detail, my mate's not in the greatest of health in the world. So then I sort of start, and then he hurls me across, and at that point I lost it and got dragged away by my mate because I called him a stupid fucking helmeted bell end who's always at the, why are you always letting them? My mate's like, go on, and I'm like, and it's just, there was no reason. And as my mate said at the end of the game, like when we got to the pub, he said, what was that about? I was like, I don't know. And he said, why are they always like that? I said, I don't know. And I said, why would you start on us? We were like some kind of government advert for what, be a good football fan. Because we were literally coming away from the ground with him going, hard luck, mate, well played. And me going, well, at least that's 3 points for you. At least your season's got started. There was no hassle. There was no trouble. All we did was ask, could we go over the bridge? And then they sent us down this proper shady road that was all potholed, and it was dark, and there was all kids coming and going down the road. It was just again, it's that thing where they were just on war footing. The guy who spoke to me was I spoke to him civilly, just going can you not shout at us? Can you not scream in my face, please? I've not committed any sort of crime. I'm not acting in any aggressive way. And then, it's not all about that, but there's a lad who's had his elbow broken, isn't there? I've seen that on.
There's loads of instances. Peter Mowbray put some video footage up, didn't he, where they're having a go at him, but most he did some footage across the road, and heavy-handed is putting it at its lowest, isn't it? It was they seem to be almost spoiling. It's like the old SPG in the old days, wasn't it? They were like basically hired thugs, weren't they? The special police group, whatever they were called, and they'd go in and just kick the living daylights out of people because that's what they did, and they seem to have that mentality. All of them. I mean, maybe it's a greater Manchester police thing. I don't know, but it was it made our police look positively. Positively enlightened, didn't it?
Well, I don't know if either of you walked back up to. We probably wouldn't have been on the coach, but obviously I walked back.
I was having a Costa with Grimmy, mate.
But they were just like, it was like they'd got all the toys out. They were razzing up and down the road outside the ground. They were flying up to the station, but half the time there was nothing. We walked back and walked past Northwestern Station. There was a load of them hurtling down the road about 80 miles an hour, screech to a halt, and then just get out and start talking to some other coppers in a police car. It was just like they were on army games, and it does my head in because there was absolutely no justification for it, and there's no justification for smacking lads with batons. There's no justification for screaming at people. There's no justification for breaking people's arms or elbows when the back's turned on you. It's not on, and you absolutely would not accept it in any other entertainment where you paid 30 plus quid to go and watch it. You just wouldn't have it. I've said it before, but can you imagine if that happened at the theatre or the opera or the ice rink or whatever other thing you would buy a ticket to go and see, a group of people would do? You just not have it.
Well, did anyone see that recent interview with I can't remember who it was, a very senior police officer, and he said people can't. We'd prefer people to be sat down rather than have safe standing because it encourages cocaine use and throwing missiles, having them in safe standing pens. I don't know if you saw that, Tim. I'll try and I was going to dig it out and show it on one episode, but I will do. But yeah, Tim, Bob Harris just said special. It was the hamster's name, and that's what I thought. I always remember Vivian's hamster was called SPG.
Being somebody of a certain vintage, I remember it being on Not the 9 O'Clock News in 1980, the SPG. Constable, you're mixture to you, aren't you? What was it? Constable, it was...
but yeah...
Constable Savage. So those who remember the Not the 9 O'Clock News, it was Constable Savage who was sent to the SPG at the end after he'd arrested Mr. Kadogo about 50 times for different offences that didn't justify it. So he said, "We're not going to lose your job. We're going to send you to the SPG." That was the final line of it.
That's Alex said. He said they were using batons for fun. They wanted to close us off, and another copper screamed in my face because I just asked if I could go to the station.
Well, I mean, I didn't get battened, but that was exactly us. Was literally we asked why the bridge was closed. Because my mate's like, I live over there. It's that thing about they pen you in, and like, we didn't want to fight with anyone. We didn't want to cause any trouble. We wanted to go to my mate's house, which is about 5 minutes walk over the bridge. And so what they do instead is pen you in and hit you, and then say, "Oh, football fans are troublemakers." It's just a
the
fucking.
Thing is, they're not accountable either.
No, they're not.
No one's been. None of those tossers, and that's what they are. Tossers have been held accountable to this.
They were the hooligans, weren't they? On that,
yeah.
If there's any hooligans, it was them lot. And if they were on the other side and doing what they were doing, as football fans to us as police officers, they'd get sent down.
Oh yeah. What was that? What was the lad who got sent down for banging on the window at Bloomfield Road against Carl? And
Rusted.
Yeah. Sent down for banging on a window. Because that copper said he was 100% scared, if you remember. That's why he got... Anyway.
I listen, I didn't see any of it, so I can't comment, but I've seen Peter Mowbray's videos, and I've seen all the the different anecdotal stories, and there's a consistent theme, and that is police thuggery, and there's no other way to describe it.
It's just a shame that these lot aren't held accountable for assaulting people, and it annoys me. They tar everyone with the same brush.
Yeah,
right. There is the odd, no one's debating. There are a few rough and ready types following all teams, but they just treat every single person like they're a troublemaker. It ain't on.
And I tell you what, they used that classic thing which they've used outside Blackpool a few times. They said something like, somebody behind us went, "Why is the bridge closed?" And they went, "Because we're preventing public disorder," or something. It's that idea that they're somehow this heroic line that's stopping trouble, and yet when I was walking down to the ground, there were just scuffles going off all over the place. I was walking down through. Trying to think where it'd be. I think it's Frog Lane in Wigan, or it might not be Frog Lane. I don't know. Anyway, whatever road it is runs down to the ground, and it's just going off all over the place. There's not a copper to be seen.
Yeah, when the shit hits the fan, they don't want to know.
As Gurney says, we should have. If you're a stop the oil protester, they wouldn't go anywhere near you, would they?
Just lie down.
They'd make you a brew and give you a sandwich and help you glue your hands to the floor.
Instead of asking if you can go over the bridge, maybe just start singing "Kumbaya" next time and get a bit of super glue out your pocket. Right, I think we'll leave it there, everybody. As it says on the banner there, if you like this content, if you want to support the show, join our Patreon support program, patreon.com/SeasidePod. Price of a pint per month. Help support the show. Also, like and subscribe to the video, and all that jazz. So no more football for a while, gents. But thanks for your company, and I'm sure we'll have to have a few specials in between now and the World Cup. Maybe even a live England watch along. Maybe not.
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not. Right, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for downloading. And up the pool.
Up the pool.
Up the pool.